It is for us now together to support Moldova as it proceeds towards European integration. The current government, I think, takes the rule of law seriously. The removal of high-ranking officials as a result of corruption, the ratification of the Istanbul Convention, the strengthening of anti-corruption authorities, the strengthening of the independence of the judiciary are all important. But I think the report also talks about challenges for the future. How can a democratic state deal with multiplicity of political parties or attempts to undermine the rule of law? It's difficult to ensure a democracy while countering difficult situations. We need to consolidate the rule of law and at the same time the rights of those who would prefer to undermine the current system. Now, whether the government of the Republic of Moldova will succeed, we'll see. I think the parties, and this is the normal situation, in a democracy, political parties have to be able to work together. We'll see new figures entering onto the political scene, new presidents, prime ministers. And I think when we see a change in political leadership, then I think it will be a sign of the fact that majority and opposition have been able to succeed one another. And in Germany, we talk about an ideal democracy where opposition and majority can work together, and those who are of goodwill can outweigh those who seek to undermine democracy and seek to weaken democracy. So let us accompany the Republic of Moldova along its path towards greater democracy by exercising criticism, but at the same time extending our support.
And now the next speaker is Madam Kalnina Lukashevika. Madam.
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, let me start by thanking the Monitoring Committee and the two co-rapporteurs, Mr. Pierre-Alain Frides and previous head of the Latvian delegation, Ms. Ines Libiņa-Egnere, for the excellent report. It's a particular pleasure to read in the draft resolution that since the summer of 2021, the authorities of Moldova have embarked on a far-reaching program of reform, notably in the judiciary and the fight against corruption, to tackle the roots of state capture and thereby restore integrity and public trust in state institutions. Dear colleagues, but today I would like to especially emphasize the highly supportive response of Moldova in accepting Ukrainian refugees. It is an example of humanity, solidarity, and democratic values. We live in times when these values are challenged, and only together we can defend them. I realize the extent of pressure Moldova is facing from Russia's aggressive foreign policy. In the light of that, even more we commend Moldova's resilience towards Russia, manipulative actions, and ability at the same time to achieve progress on the reform implementation. Moldova's efforts in the reform process have been acknowledged by this report, as well as by receiving the EU candidate country status. It is important to ensure the irreversibility and sustainability of the reforms, as the current progress will define Moldova's destiny in the future. We are delighted to note that the EU support to Moldova has clearly reduced the impact of the Russia's war in Ukraine on Moldova, as well as improved its resilience to the aggressive Russian foreign policy and energy manipulation. It is essential for all of us to become independent of Russian energy sources, as soon as possible ending Russia's energy blackmail. It is important to strengthen our mutual support and solidarity as a basis for rules-based and values-based international order. Dear Moldovan friends, you can count on our support. Countries with valuable and relevant reform experience and accumulated expertise will continue to share it in order to help you to facilitate implementation of the reforms. And before I conclude, once again, let me thank the both rapporteurs for preparing this excellent report. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. And the next speaker on behalf of the ALDE group is Madam Stoica.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of ALDE, my political group, I welcome Ms. Gnere and Mr. Fride's excellent report and congratulate Moldova for the good resolution that they received. By now, we have all learned that Moldova is a small country with a big European heart, a parliamentary democracy that has embarked on a courageous reform despite the odds being stacked against them with a series of crises. The Russian illegal invasion and war waged against Ukraine is having serious effects on the neighboring Republic of Moldova. In a real spirit of solidarity and upholding European values, Moldova is actively supporting those fleeing Ukraine, hosts an important number of refugees per capita. This represents a major logistical challenge for the Moldovan government, and our support from the EU and from the member states is necessary. The war also destabilized the energy market and with it Moldova's energy security. That, combined with the record inflation and the drought, made the situation even more difficult for Moldova. Despite these challenges, the Moldovan government is strongly committed to delivering on its clear reform goals, notably as regards to its judicial reform, public administration reform, and the modernization of the economy to benefit the people of Moldova. As the rapporteur stated on the justice reform, the country took decisive steps, including constitutional reforms, to improve the functioning of the judiciary. Moldova has also made significant progress in the freedom of the media, passing a special law to combat fake news and propaganda. In regards to the political criteria, Moldova has a solid foundation in place to reach the stability of institutions guaranteeing democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and respect and protection of minorities. The parliamentary nature of the democracy has also been confirmed by recent competitive elections at parliamentary and presidential level, as the PACE delegation of observers such as myself were able to witness. We continue to support the Republic of Moldova on its path towards European integration. Moldova is an European state committed to respecting and promoting the values on which the European Union is founded. We know that Chișinău's road ahead on the path to European integration is not an easy one, and completing these stages will lead to the consolidation of the rule of law and to a modern, proper society based on European modern values, and we will be there for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the ECDA group, I call Mr. Goncharenko.
Thank you. First of all, on behalf of Ukraine and Ukrainians, I want to say thank you to Moldova, Mulțumesc, for all support Ukraine received and Ukrainians during this war of aggression that Russia started against us. Almost 500,000 Ukrainian externally displaced people came through Moldova, and many of them stayed in the most difficult time, especially people from my native city of Odessa. We will never forget it, and that is very important for us. Also, we see how Moldova is moving now actively to the free world, and we are absolutely happy with this. But who is unhappy? It's Russia, the country which tries to influence Moldova too. Russia is attacking Moldova, paying Moldovan politicians, pro-Russian politicians, making some rallies inside the country, making a house, attacking in propaganda, weaponizing energy, blackmailing with energy. Certainly for Russia it was one of the aims to take Odessa, to cut Ukraine from the Black Sea, and then to attack Moldova. Because to connect with already occupied by Russia Transnistria. That was their aim. They failed because of Ukrainian army. But they try to destabilize Moldova right now. But I am sure Moldovan people will never let do this. And together, how now is the decision that Ukraine and Moldova are candidates to European Union together. Together we will move ahead. Together we will become members of European Union. I believe in NATO in future as a real part of free world. That is very important. And that is also a lesson to other countries. Unfortunately, there is one more country which we love with all our heart like Moldova. It's Georgia. Country which we love, but country, unfortunately, the government of which after almost 1 year of the war, couldn't take the side in this war. They are, I can tell you, Ukraine 30 times addressed them with, please give us, not to give, sell us weaponry. No answer. Even after in 2008, Ukraine was helping Georgia when Russia attacked Georgia. When we are saying to them, let's join our peaceful initiatives, no answer, no answer. And now they are thinking about even opening new direct lines with the Russian Federation, not like the whole free world making sanctions against Russian Federation, but Georgian government is going another way. And we see the results. Today, Georgia has not received the status of candidate to European Union. That is very worrying for me because we love Georgia. We believe that future of Georgian people is in Europe, like Moldovan people, like Ukraine, being part of free world. Kartvela Gomarjos, Viva Moldova, Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Mr. Goncharenko. And lastly, for the UEL group, Madam Castell.
Thank you, President. First of all, let me thank the co-rapporteurs for their excellent work. Dear colleagues, as it is stressed in the report, Moldova is a country that faced serious challenges since the last monitoring report, mainly three. The first is the refugee crisis. More than 700,000 refugees from Ukraine crossed the country, and around 90,000 remained in. The second one is the energetic crisis, with one of the highest energy prices in Europe. And the third is the economic consequences of the war. But under our point of view, the monitoring report is too enthusiastic and positive towards the government achievements. There's still a lot to be done to fulfill all the commitments. The democratic institutions are still not functioning properly. The corruption is still a big issue, and its fight in state institutions remains a big challenge. There is a lack of progress in judiciary reform, including the prosecutor's office. The way how the former prosecutor general was removed raises serious concerns. Moldovan society, indeed, doesn't trust these reforms. Many Venice Commission's recommendations are not taken into consideration. The new electoral code was adopted with no proper debate and with no consensus. There are reasonable questions concerning the media freedom. 6 television channels were banned recently by a decision of the State of Emergency Commission. This is a clear step back in freedom of speech and pluralism in Moldovan media. The State of Emergency Commission shouldn't be used to reduce the fundamental rights and liberties and to substitute the parliament or the government. The growing influence and rights of the secret services are also concerning. Their power are planned to be expanded under a draft law. This Information and Security Service can update by itself the sanctions list against Moldovan citizens. We do believe, colleagues, that the monitoring process of Moldova must go on. It's for what I exposed that we believe that it's of utmost importance to follow up closely the future local elections, the state of the rule of law, and the democratic freedoms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that brings to an end the speakers from political groups. Move on to the main part of the speakers list. And I start with Christophe Lacroix. La parole est à vous.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much indeed, President. President, distinguished colleagues, first of all, I should like to thank the rapporteurs, particularly Pierre Alain, and to welcome the progress that has been made by the Republic of Moldova, but at the same time, I think it's important perhaps just to be a little bit nuanced, and we've heard a lot of praise heaped on the country. It just so happens that I'm the General Rapporteur on LGBTI, and the Assembly, let's remember, after all, has been very clear on gender issues and asked all countries to implement transparent policies based on self-determination. And indeed, the UN Special Rapporteur wanted recognition of gender to be based on self-determination and for there to be a simple administrative procedure and not any kind of abusive requirements, such as, for example, the obligation to produce a medical certificate. Now, the fact of the matter is that a medical certificate is required and requires as well endorsement by a court. So the whole process is medicalized. A diagnosis of transsexualism would then be given after an in-depth medical organization, and applicants, as I say, would then have to await a court decision. Now, the recognition of gender is on a civil document which implicitly then refers to a transsexual person and to his or her right to recognition of a preferred gender, that gender being only male or female. All of this means is that the state of play in Moldova is at variance with international requirements, whereby there be accessible gender paths for transgender people. There must be a transparent and accessible procedure for transgender people on the basis of self-determination in accordance with the WHO Circular Number 11, which came into force in January 2022, which then depathologizes transgenderism in all walks of life. The Council of Europe and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe appointed me as their General Rapporteur, and I just want to flag we should be particularly attentive to these aspects, although, as the Rapporteur has explained, Moldova has made considerable progress on many fronts, and Moldova should indeed be commended for all of that progress. Thank you.
Mr. Popsoy.
Mr. Chair, honourable colleagues, I'd like to begin by thanking the rapporteurs for their excellent work, for their show of professionalism and fairness in evaluating the recent successes that Moldova has achieved. Despite the enormous suffering caused by the barbaric Russian aggression against Ukraine, but more importantly, thanks to the endless courage, determination, and sacrifice of the Ukrainian people, and in light of the generous support of the international community, Moldova is able to carry on. And not only is Moldova carrying on and providing support to the largest number of refugees per capita, being the small country with a big heart, but the country is also able to implement substantive reforms, first and foremost in the justice sector and combating corruption. There are already the first achievements of the vetting of the judiciary. Yes, there is robust sabotage from within and outside the system. There is attempts by pro-Russian forces and Russian intelligence attempts to destabilize Moldova. But Moldova will carry forward. And not only is Moldova succeeding in this cornerstone fundamental reforms, Moldova is succeeding across the board. In recent years, Moldova has improved 40 positions in the international ranking of freedom of the media by the Reporters Without Borders. Moldova is a leader in the world in reducing the gender gap, having one of the most active representation of women in politics. Moldova is doing significant improvements in combating corruption. And this year, or rather past year, Moldova has achieved the candidacy status to join the European Union. And the government and the parliament and the presidency and the entire society will be working diligently to hopefully start negotiations this year and turn the page on the suffering and the sorrow that the Soviet and the post-Soviet era entails. Moldovans, just like Ukrainians, just like Georgians, want to be part of the free world. This year, we also will be proudly hosting the European political community. the Republic of Moldova and President Sandu will be hosting the heads of state and government of the entire Europe. At the same time, I would like to thank again you, honourable colleagues, and the rapporteurs for this report, which is one of the best, if not the best, in the almost 30 years history. And we look forward, perhaps, in the upcoming years, to graduate the monitoring and go to the post-monitoring phase. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to Mr. Gras.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much indeed, President. Colleagues, I've been fortunate enough on a number of occasions to visit the Republic of Moldova and to spend a little time on its history. We only need to look back a decade to be able to say that the country has had a turbulent history, both politically and socially speaking. A scandal involving several banks in 2014, and the instability in which the country has long been immersed has caused a mistrust of politicians and state institutions. Other issues arise between 2020 and 2021. The parliament was dissolved and snap elections to be held. The Moldovan population are demanding the eradication of corruption and the establishment of functional, transparent state institutions in line with European values, which we all cherish. Colleagues, such a radical and ambitious change, of course, cannot be achieved overnight. This report summarizes the efforts that have already been made. Not the least of these is a new electoral code and a constitutional revision aimed at depoliticizing the judiciary, reforms and steps taken on corruption and crime. Of course, we should not be fooled. Interference and corruption are still present despite all these efforts. But we should, however, be pleased with the progress that's been made and support the Republic of Moldova in its development towards a transparent democracy and a rule of law worthy of this name. The same applies to human rights, where there are positive trends that can be observed. I'm thinking here of the progress made in the field of gender equality through the ratification of the Istanbul Convention in 2022. And here too, these efforts must be continued. Momentum needs to be maintained with regard to interference in the work of journalists and the press. Excessive state influence on the population through the media must be avoided at all costs. Since the beginning of the Russian war in Ukraine, I'd like to highlight the remarkable efforts of the Republic of Moldova to provide aid to war refugees. This aid shows a clear rapprochement and willingness to align with European values of peace, democracy and solidarity. Generally speaking, Luxembourg recognises the work that has been done so far. And in June 2022, our Parliament invited the government through a motion to express support to the Republic of Moldova's European aspirations. Therefore, we commend the decision of the European Union on the 23rd of June 2022 to grant the Republic of Moldova the status of candidate to the Union, which will undoubtedly be beneficial not only to the Republic of Moldova, but also to our community. The Moldovan population must not feel discouraged in any way. Their motivation must remain to work for an open, democratic state based on just and human values. Thank you very much indeed to the rapporteur, Mrs. Lebina, and Mr. Frieders. Thank you very much indeed.
Now I give the floor to Mr. Molajada. Is he still here?
I'm here.
Yes, there you are, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, people of Moldova express to the world what they want, electing young, dynamic president which choose a path of reforms, changing Moldova according to European standards and intensify accession process. Immediately, Moldova faced a lot of problems. Problem related to energy, problem related with very sophisticated technology. using oligarchs for destabilization situation in Moldova, stop reforms, not allow, provide anti-corruption measures, and this situation, Moldova in very difficult situation because of war in Ukraine, flow of refugees, and I definitely believe that Moldova needs support. One of the forms of support is possible European sanction and European criminal investigation regarding oligarchs, which freely are in Europe. Just the same situation happened in Azerbaijan when Russia said Ruben Vardanyan, he's a tricky guy who provides money laundering in Europe, laundering of dirty money of Russian oligarchs and bureaucrats. He came to Karabakh with his goal to start war again. And this oligarch situation also we face in time in Ukraine when Medvedchuk was a puppet who tried to stop Ukrainian development toward Europe. Now a lot of people talking about here about Lachin corridor, but Ruben Vardanyan, Russian crook oligarch, every month passing this corridor, coming to Europe, and there were information about his involvement in corruption scandal in European Parliament. A lot of dirty money working against countries who would like to be free, and Moldova needs support. I told about the energy problems in this country. Azerbaijan now provides gas to Moldova because we are allies and we're members of GUAM organization, Georgia, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Moldova, united in our struggle to be free, and signed in New York treaty about free economic zone between GUAM country. We will support our ally Moldova, and I ask our European colleagues, help to Moldova. Moldova deserves freedom.
Thank you. And now Mr. Groza.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, in November 2020, Maya Sandu became the first female president of the Republic of Moldova, elected on a clear pro-European agenda. In July 2021, in the wake of a political and constitutional crisis, the President's Action and Solidarity Party won a majority in a snap parliamentary election for the first time in its history. The Republic of Moldova is governed by a stable parliamentary majority held by a single party, focused on integration in European Union. A series of action and reforms were swiftly launched by the newly elected authorities to clean the system from its corrupt elements and put an end to the state-kept but Russia aggression against Ukraine. On February 24, raised considerable challenges. This conflict has been added to the energy crisis and management of COVID-19 pandemic that has disrupted economic cooperation with neighboring Ukraine and led to high inflation rates around 30%, that directly affect the population of the Republic of Moldova. At the same time, the war caused a new refugee crisis. Ukrainian families say that the Republic of Moldova successfully managed the refugee crisis when its citizens opened the doors of their home to host Ukrainian families who fled and are still fleeing the war. Following the outbreak of war, the Moldovan authorities applied on 3rd of March 2022 together with Ukraine and Georgia to the European Union. In this context, a National Commission for European Integration was created and adopted an action plan for meeting the conditions linked to Moldova states as European Union candidate country. The regional context, the measurable pressures generated by the Russian Federation on energy matters, and when the consequences of the war have placed the Republic of Moldova in a very difficult situation, which the authorities are trying to manage with calm and resilience. In this context, we welcome the close and fruitful cooperation of the Council of Europe, in particular the Assembly and the Monitoring Committee, as well as the Venice Commission with the Moldovan authorities. The current authorities of the Republic of Moldova are firmly determined to make every effort to succeed in promoting and implementing the reforms to make possible the irreversible accession and integration in the European Union. Only on the great family of Europe we see our future and security. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the next speaker will have to be the last speaker, and I call Zeynep Yildiz from Turkey.
Thank you, dear President, dear colleagues. Turkey does not have a common border with the Republic of Moldova, as you all know. Yet we always consider Moldova as our neighbor and support its territorial integrity and sovereignty. We also support Moldova's commitment to European integration and welcome the granting of the European Union candidate country status of Moldova. As stated in the report, Moldova carries out a reform process to restore the independence of judiciary, trust in the state institutions, and fight against corruption. We commend the country's efforts to consolidate its institutions and reform process. Nevertheless, I believe it will benefit Moldova to cooperate more with European institutions in the ongoing reform process. Although the European Union accession negotiations will contribute to this process, cooperation with the Council of Europe institutions should be maintained in order for the reforms to be implemented on the basis of Council of Europe standards. All in all, Moldova's deeper integration with European institutions will help to improve welfare and well-being of Moldovan people, including our kinsmen Gagavusians. The Gagavuz people constitute a special bridge between Turkey and Moldova. We always want to see a prosperous Gagavuzia in a strong Moldova. We would like the Gagavuz people to preserve their cultural identity and territorial autonomy while they are fully integrated with Moldova. And this can only be achieved through an inclusive approach by Moldovan authorities. With regard to the Romanian language learning, an issue addressed in the report in relation with the reforms in the field of democracy, I would like to inform you that Turkey always encouraged Gagavuz people to learn Romanian and Gagavuz Turkish. There are projects such as building of an educational complex undertaken by the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency in Comrat in line with this understanding. In conclusion, I wish the upcoming elections this year for the office of Başkan of Gagavuzia will bring the best results for building trust and strengthening the relations between Zinau and Comrat. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Yildiz. I must now, unfortunately, interrupt the list of speakers. The speeches of members on the speakers list who have been present during the debate but have not been able to speak may be given to the table office for publication in the official report. I remind colleagues that typewritten text can be submitted electronically if possible, no later than 4 hours after the list of speakers is interrupted. And I now call Mr. Frides. Vous avez 3 minutes.
You have 3 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président.
Thank you very much to the Vice President, and thank you to all speakers in this debate. And I just want to remind you of a few points and make a few responses. Josette Derieux, former member from France, characterized Moldova as being a country between two worlds, one which was beset by great instability, recurrent political changes, and always struggling to decide whether it should turn towards the West or to Russia. At the end of the day, it made a clear choice, and the country has had to rise to certain challenges and contend with difficulties and deserves our solidarity, particularly right now when it has taken in so many migrants. Yes, Ms. Castell, you're right, monitoring must continue, that is important. But I think it's important to remember where we started from. I mean, when I very first heard about the country, what we heard about was members changing parliamentary groups. Out of 100, there were about 30 who would change group every year, and often there were huge problems of corruption. So the government, of course, has tackled these problems head on. There's a lot of internal resistance, but there is genuine willingness and determination to improve things. And I think Mr. Grass explained the situation very well. Now, the majority party, let's call it that, bears a great deal of responsibility, and via the Venice Commission and ourselves, all the support that we can give them, they wish to build a robust state which is fully in compliance with the rule of law. Yes, it's quite true that TV stations were closed down, but that was during a time of war and a state of emergency. This is a very fragile country after all. It doesn't have an army, and it's not very well situated geographically. You've got Transnistria, where there are between 2,000 and 3,000 Russian soldiers, and it is true to say that the Russian authorities broadcast fake news to the Russian-speaking population. I mean, we've all heard of such instances, and of course that is a very unfortunate turn of events, but I don't believe they had any other choice. Now, Ms. Leclerc was talking about the LGBTI community, not an issue that we discussed during our visits, I have to admit, but one that I undertake to raise with the Moldovan authorities at an upcoming visit. At all events, thank you very much indeed for your contributions to the debate. Moldova and the Moldovan people are very endearing, and that is why it was a real honor for me to assist the country in its moves towards greater democracy as well as moving closer towards Europe. Thank you very much.
Does the Vice Chairperson of the committee wish to speak? If so, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to thank and congratulate our rapporteurs, Mr. Fides and Ms. Libina Ingen, for the report submitted today. Our committee has been following the latest development in the country with great attention. The rapporteurs have witnessed the dramatic contemporary development while preparing this monitoring report. The outbreak of the war in neighboring Ukraine has had dramatic effects on the country. Therefore, this report is not an ordinary report. I would like to thank the rapporteurs for taking into account the impact of the war on Moldova, including the massive arrival of refugees, the energy crisis, the geopolitical pressure and hybrid war against Moldova, and the consequences of the functioning of democratic institutions. The report makes an accurate description of the consequences of the war and the commitments of the authorities to continue the reforms despite the difficult circumstances. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the Moldovan people for their generous hospitality when they accepted nearly 100,000 refugees. In 2020 and 2021, the Moldovan people have expressed a clear choice in favor of the European integration. The report described the reforms in area which are the key for the role of law and democracy, and at the same time it illustrates the challenges still faced by the country. As a Vice President of the Monitoring Committee, I would like to commend the excellent cooperation of our rapporteurs and the authorities and the active role of the Moldovan delegation in our meeting. Today, the report which is submitted to you is a result of the committed work of our rapporteurs. Despite the dramatic changes of circumstances, the rapporteurs have elaborated a comprehensive report and proposed a detailed draft resolution unanimously approved by the Monitoring Committee. Dear colleagues, I would like to thank again our rapporteurs, but also our Moldovan colleagues, both from the majority and from the opposition, for their constructive attitudes to the committee. The Council of Europe is based on cooperation, and we appreciate the important support of the Council of Europe to the democratic developments of the country. I invite you to support this draft resolution. By doing so, you will express the support of the Assembly to the Republic of Moldova to strengthen in democratic and human rights-oriented reforms. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. The Committee on Monitoring has presented a draft resolution. This can be found in document 15680, to which no amendments have been tabled. So we will now proceed directly to the vote on the draft resolution, for which a simple majority is required. The vote is now open. The vote is now closed, and I call for the results to be displayed. The draft resolution in document 15680 is approved. Thank you very much.
Just for the technical reason. So my vote today for the resolution 2484/82, legal and human rights aspects of the Russian Federation aggression against Ukraine, was not considered. So I want to fix my position that I was in favor to vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for putting your position on the record. Obviously, the vote cannot be retaken, but members have heard your view. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, the final item of business this afternoon is a current affairs debate on addressing the humanitarian consequences of the blockade of Lachin corridor. Speaking time in this debate is limited to 3 minutes sharp for all members except the first speaker, chosen by the Bureau, who is allowed 7 minutes. In the debate, I first call Mr. Pierre-Alain Frides. Pierre-Alain, vous avez 7 minutes.
You have 7 minutes, Pierre-Alain. Thank you very much indeed, President. The Lachin corridor is a strip of territory about 5 kilometers in width, which connects 65 kilometers of the Armenian border with the territory known as Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh by Armenia, and Karabakh by Azerbaijan. It is a strategic location that was a subject to special provisions during the negotiations that followed the fighting in 2020. The tripartite agreement of the 9th of November 2020 laid down in its Article 6 the obligation for Azerbaijan, which had control of this location, to, and I quote, guarantee the security of persons and vehicles moving in both directions. A blockade of this territory began on the 12th of December last year when Azerbaijani nationals blocked the only road connecting this territory inhabited by some 120,000 Armenians to Armenia, a vital road for this population. The blockade is located in an area that is under the responsibility of the Russian peacekeeping mission. In preparing this intervention, in addition to explanatory letters from both sides, I've relied on the text of a decision handed down by the European Court of Human Rights, which decided on the 21st of December 2022 to take interim measures asking the government of Azerbaijan to take all measures at their disposal to ensure free passage through the Lachin corridor for persons seriously ill and in need of medical treatment in Armenia, or for persons stranded on the road without shelter or means of subsistence. The issue at the root of the situation, according to Mr. Saidov's letter sent to me, is the Azerbaijani government's formal request in early December to halt the allegedly illegal mining in Nagorno-Karabakh, which is causing environmental damage. This request by the Azeri government has reportedly been ignored, and according to Mr. Saidov's letter, this has caused legitimate indignation among Azeri environmentalists who, since the 12th of December 2022, have been staging, according to him, a peaceful demonstration spontaneously to prevent the use of this road for improper purposes. In the term improper, the Azeri delegation also includes the sending of ammunition and mines to Karabakh by the Armenians. The Azeri side denies all accusations that the road is completely blocked. Medical vehicles, according to them, pass through without any problem, as do 40 to 50 vehicles a day in both directions, transporting food and other essential goods. According to this, therefore, basic humanitarian needs are being met. The situation, however, would seem to be profoundly different according to the information provided to us by the Armenian camp, which considers that there's a real blockade organised by pseudo-demonstrators using mining as a pretext. According to them, everything has been orchestrated by the Baku authorities. According to their version, the Azerbaijani government has blocked the daily import of several hundred tons of essential goods, including basic necessities, food, medicines such as insulin, fuel, products regularly imported into Karabakh from Armenia. The situation is reportedly serious and the humanitarian crisis is worsening daily. The work of social services and access to healthcare are reportedly hampered by the lack of resources, with the most vulnerable, young and old people being put at risk and human suffering becoming more widespread. The shortage of food and other goods is becoming more and more noticeable, with the appearance of ration coupons. In addition, during these cold winter months, there are reports of temporary cuts in gas and electricity supplies, seriously exacerbating the situation of the populations concerned. Thousands of children are being deprived of their right to education. Their schools are being closed down because they have no heating. More than 1,000 people are reportedly blocked along this road, unable to return home. In addition, hundreds of children have been separated from their families. There are reports of disruptions in access to telecommunications and the internet. At times, the population of Nagorno-Karabakh is said to be cut off from all communication with the outside world. According to the Armenians, the corridor is still closed today, with only a few international Red Cross vehicles allowed to transport a limited number of very sick patients to Armenia. For the Armenians, this is therefore a clear violation of the tripartite peace agreement of the 9th of November 2020, which is supposed to ensure full freedom of movement of citizens, vehicles and goods between Armenia and Karabakh through the Lachin corridor. It should be noted that the responsibility for the implementation of this agreement would normally rest with the Russian peacekeeping forces, who have reportedly remained completely passive in the face of this situation. So there are two versions, as always diametrically opposed. We're used to this. But there seems to have been, and there probably still is, a blockade of the Lachin corridor. In addition to the clear position adopted by the European Court of Human Rights on the 21st December last year, which I've already mentioned, and a number of international interventions have occurred. The blockade was raised in the United Nations Security Council on the 20th December 2022, with clear statements made by representatives from France, the UK, China, Russia, Ireland, India, Brazil and Norway. The message from these different countries was unanimous: the reopening of the corridor to avoid an escalation of the situation and a humanitarian crisis. We should also note, among many others, the statement of the 16th of December made by the spokesperson of the United States State Department to express concern about the closure of the corridor, which could have serious humanitarian consequences and cause Azerbaijan to restore free movement in the Lachin corridor. Finally, on the 19th of January, the European Parliament adopted a resolution on the violation of human rights in Nagorno-Karabakh, calling for the lifting of the blockade, the setting up of a UN and OSCE humanitarian inquiry, and denouncing the inaction of the Russian People Forces. The entire international community has therefore been mobilized on this issue with a unanimous position. So the aim today, the hope that we can express, is for there to be an immediate normalization of the situation, with effective measures taken to restore the possibilities of movement in the Lachin corridor and to resolve as quickly as possible the problems of food supplies, medicine and energy supply, and to thus avoid a humanitarian drama. The ball is in the court of the Azeri authorities. And there are two possibilities for them. Either they immediately provide proof of the falsity of the allegations that have been made, not only by words, but also based on an independent international observation on the spot in the next few days, according to arrangements to be discussed. Ideally, the co-rapporteurs of both countries in dispute should be allowed access to the corridor, or they proceed without delay and lift the existing blockade. It would certainly be very problematic to find out that this situation has caused a humanitarian tragedy. If that were to happen, the Azerbaijani authorities would then have to answer for it. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Merci à vous, Pierre-Alain. Now, in the debate, I first call the 5 speakers on behalf of the political groups, and first speaker is Madam Boriana Aberg from Sweden on behalf of the EPP group. Boriana, you have the floor, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. It is with great sadness that we once again are debating about the humanitarian crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh. Yet again, the debate is at the bottom of the agenda and very few of the members of the Assembly are present. The suffering of 120,000 people of Nagorno-Karabakh deserve greater attention. But before anything else, they deserve that their fundamental human rights are respected. It's not a question of territorial integrity. It's not a question about Armenia or about Azerbaijan. It's a question of human rights. Since the Lachin corridor, the only road that links Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia was blocked by so-called environmentalists on December 12, a humanitarian crisis has struck its residents. There is a shortage of food, and a Russian stamp-based system has since been introduced. Medicine, including for children and persons with long-term medical conditions, are largely unavailable. Furthermore, during the blockade, the gas supplies were disrupted on 2 occasions. In that also lies the problem of electricity supply after Azerbaijan damaged the only high-voltage power line which supplies Nagorno-Karabakh. The line is not restored yet, as the Azerbaijani forces did not allow reparation teams. People in Nagorno-Karabakh are freezing and starving in the darkness. This darkness also covers informational darkness, since one internet cable was cut by so-called activists on the 12th of January. Recently, the US Secretary of State Blinken spoke with Azerbaijan's President Aliyev to urge an immediate reopening of the Lachin corridor. Prior to that, the European Parliament approved a resolution in which it urged Azerbaijan to release Armenian prisoners of war, to withdraw its troops from Armenia's sovereign territory, and to open the Lachin corridor. The Secretary General of Council of Europe, the Commissioner of Human Rights, and the rapporteurs of Azerbaijan and Armenia also made statements about the blockade. Evidently, there is significant international pressure, further strengthened by the fact that the European Court of Human Rights indicated interim measures to Azerbaijan on this subject. Unfortunately, Azerbaijan has decided to ignore these pleas. Hence, I want to ask, what actions need to be taken in order for Azerbaijan to fulfill its commitments as a member of the Council of Europe?
Thank you very much, Boria. Thank you very much. I have to be a bit strict, so to give as many possible speakers the floor. Prochain orateur est Monsieur Bertrand Bouix.
Your next speaker is Bertrand Bouix from France, speaking on behalf of the ALDE Group. Thank you very much indeed, President. Colleagues, this current affairs debate is absolutely crucial. The Lachin corridor is a lifeline for the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. It links Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh, therefore affording access as well as supplies. In keeping with the trilateral declaration of the 9th of November 2020, the Republic of Azerbaijan undertook to guarantee security of the movement of people, vehicles and goods along the Lachin corridor in both directions. In the wake of a French initiative, the European political community met for the first time in Prague on 6th of October in presence of the Armenian Prime Minister and the Azerbaijani President, and it permitted progress to be made, notably the deployment of an observation mission of the European Union. The Council of Europe, which of course is built on the bedrock of human rights and fundamental freedoms, must be able to participate in these observation missions and see for itself the state of play on the ground. At any event, for one thing, the serious hampering of transport along the corridor is leading to dire humanitarian repercussions for the local population. And it is impossible to imagine a situation in which people leave Nagorno-Karabakh as life has become impossible in the enclave. And any shift in the situation on the ground can only come about as a result of political dialogue between both parties. My own country, France, as a member of the Minsk group, remains fully committed to supporting the negotiations which are currently underway following on from meetings in Brussels, Prague and Washington. When it comes to us as European countries, particularly EU members, we have to keep the advantage on both sides. We have to maintain cooperation, particularly economic cooperation. Azerbaijan, of course, supplies gas to the EU, but at the same time, we should remember that our continent is a community which shares respect for human rights, democratic principles, fundamental freedoms, and freedom of expression in particular. And that is why I hope that the Azerbaijani population, as well as Armenian people wherever they live, will be afforded those freedoms. And I call on the countries of our continent to commit to settling the conflict, which has been forgotten somewhat, but has gone on for too long.
From the United Kingdom, and she speaks on behalf of the European Conservatives. Jill, you have the floor.
I'm deeply saddened to hear that hundreds of people have died in and around Nagorno-Karabakh in recent months, and that the situation there is degrading further. I understand that the origins of the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia in this region can be traced back almost a century, rekindled by the fall of the Soviet Union and boiling over into two terrible wars in the last 30 years. But what have these wars achieved? They've not yielded anything like a permanent settlement or a positive relationship between the countries. Even the prisoners of war are unreturned. If these countries want to live at peace with each other as good neighbours, they must find a way to talk to each other with honesty and in good faith. I call upon the governments of Azerbaijan and Armenia to engage with the efforts of the OSCE to secure peace and stability. What we have now is a slow march into a humanitarian disaster that we must avert. Regardless of their motives, the protesters blocking the Lachin corridor are only helping to worsen the growing crisis. I urge all parties to the trilateral statement of the 9th of November 2020 to reaffirm that the Republic of Azerbaijan shall guarantee safe movement of people, vehicles and cargo in both directions along the Lachin corridor. This is the key to keep the situation within the framework of the rules-based international order, as opposed to slipping back into further chaos and conflict. Any movement in that direction must be stopped. It is unthinkable that this region will enter into a further period of violent conflict, and what will happen to those who will pay the price if this happens. I urge Armenia and Azerbaijan to save their people from future further catastrophe. For people to live as neighbours tomorrow, they must act as friends now. I am in no doubt that rights and wrongs have been committed and suffered by both sides. But the only way to protect the innocents who will suffer terrible and inevitable harms of conflict is by reconciliation and a willingness to move forward, drawing a line and creating a positive narrative. The first step is the reopening of the Lachin corridor. However, let me be clear. Reconciliation is a two-way street, and the corridor must be used for good intention only, the legitimate movement of people, goods and humanitarian aid, and not used as a cover for the movement of contraband, military or arms. Nothing can be gained from more agitation. Further violence begets further hatred, deeper resentment and a bleaker future for both countries. Let the opening of the Lachin corridor be a new beginning, a new chapter in sincere and honest negotiations to suture these wounds. Let us seize the opportunity to build a future where Armenians and Azeris can live peacefully as neighbours.
Thank you very much, Jill. Now we are going to listen to Mr. George Katrougalos from Greece, and he speaks on behalf of the Unified European. George.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. When we were discussing the situation in Kosovo, I mentioned saying that the Balkans have been the powder keg of Europe. Caucasus risks to be another area that could be explosive in the years to come for similar reasons. Existence of minorities, disputed territories. We are not discussing here, of course, the geopolitical aspects of the conflict, just the humanitarian. But we must have in mind that in all situations, respect of international legality and what has been already agreed is fundamental. Here we have also the particularity that the facts are also disputed. The Azeri side denies there is a blockade. It is not meaningful to discuss if we do not have an agreement to the facts. And here I think that we can easily agree to the fact that blockade exists. The possibility of some vehicles of the Red Cross to carry some patients at life-threatening situation does not mean that the corridor is open. And the proof for that is that all sides that have a possibility to have a direct, let's say, understanding of the situation, like the United States or France, have already condemned this blockade. Our rapporteur has reminded us the harsh criticism of the American foreign minister, who cannot be accused to be one-sided or that he wants to promote national interests of the one or the other side. And we have again, as previous speakers have said, also allegations that other aspects that guarantee a normal life to the citizens of Nagorno-Karabakh, like the provision of gas and electricity, are now blocked. So my proposal is to endorse what the European Parliament has already endorsed. First of all, to condemn the blockade. It is self-evident. Then to ask all parties, and especially now Azerbaijan, because this is the party who seems not to implement the trilateral statement of the 9th November 2020, to fully respect it. And also to ask both parties not just to demonstrate restraint, but also to fully respect international legality. And also what has been agreed till far. For instance, the statement of Minsk Group co-chairs of the 15th of November. And also this organization can be a forum of reconciliation and not just a confrontation between the two countries involved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, George. And now the last speaker on behalf of the political groups is Mr. Konstantinos Efstasiou from Cyprus, and he speaks on behalf of the group of Socialists, Democrats and Greens. Konstantinos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are cases when we must be clear, when humanitarian issues are involved, we have to be rigid. That is why we call on the Azerbaijani authorities to ensure freedom of security of movement along the Lachin corridor in accordance with the trilateral statement of 9 November 2020. Restrictions to freedom of movement in this strip of land are causing significant distress to the local population and has the potential to create a humanitarian crisis. Access and supplies to the Nagorno-Karabakh must be unconditionally restored, and Azerbaijan must honor the trilateral agreement and guarantee the safety of people, vehicles and goods moving along the corridor. This is the sole road connecting Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh. As a result of the blockade, thousands of people are stranded and unable to reach their homes, including children. This alarming situation threatens to derail the fragile peace process and may well lead to a resumption of violence. This could have disastrous consequences, impacting not only people of Armenia and Azerbaijan, but the wider South Caucasus region and beyond. As member states of the Council of Europe, and in accordance with our values and principles, we call upon the Azerbaijani authorities to immediately open the corridor and desist from any action that could fuel further tensions in an already volatile situation. I have personally visited Azerbaijan twice, and I have never been to Armenia. I can assure that Azerbaijani people are gentle, polite, and tolerant. This is why I'm so frustrated with the situation in Lachin and the deliberate acts which seek to victimize amachos. Amachos is a Greek word for the people who do not carry arms and cannot defend themselves. That is a mother who cares for her children, the family man who cares for his parents, or the child that needs protection, food, and shelter. Victimized just because they are Armenians or Christians. After all, we all have harsh conditions of life calculated to bring about the physical destruction of a group. Dear colleagues, we are at the tipping point of the genocide. Let us not victimize people in order to gain political terms or for reasons of national interest. Every single person in this world deserves to live in dignity and in full respect of their human rights. The message must be clear. Stop the Lachin blockade.
Thank you, Konstantinos. Next in the debate, I call Mr. Kimmo Kiljunen from Finland. Kimmo.
Mr. President, I would like to start to saying pity, pity, pity. Session after session, at the final days, we have the discussion about the desperate conflict between two nations, Azeris, Armenians, who have lived centuries close to each other, that there is a war, tensions and problems. That is very pity. Now we do have the discussion about the potential major blockade of Lachin corridor and total blockade of the Nagorno-Karabakh as a whole. And obviously, if that is fully implemented, the blockade, there is a major humanitarian crisis, even catastrophe, which we will witness. So this is a very, very warning situation. Unfortunately, we hear contesting parties interpreting the situation totally differently. And you will soon hear the interpretations and differences. We hear that the Lachin corridor is closed and no transport, including maybe a few ambulances, but no transport whatsoever. Nagorno-Karabakh is isolated also. Otherwise, the gas lines have been cut, the power lines have been also cut, etc., etc. Major problem, 120,000 people living in these type of conditions and isolation. That argument is there. And the other side is saying there is actually only control, that there will be no military traffic vis-à-vis from Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh, otherwise no problems, supposed to be no problems. If there are problems, the problems are not Azeris. That's the argumentation. Azeris officials or even civic society people. The problems are Russians, Russian mafia, etc., etc. Even eco-activists have made the blockade, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, there is a total confusion. We have a confusion. My hope, my request is, let's have there an impartial international observation mission which observes the situation and verifies it. We with Boriana, we are ready. We are rapporteurs for Armenia. We are ready. I know also that rapporteurs for Azerbaijan are ready. We are ready to go in the region and assess the situation and tell you as much as we can know what are the real situation and facts. That I really ask that both parties would agree about that one. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kimo. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Ruben Rubinian from Armenia. Ruben, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank all of the speakers who spoke before me for speaking the truth. That's very important. The people in Nagorno-Karabakh may be freezing right now because of the blockade, but your words will certainly warm their hearts because they will know they are not alone, even though Azerbaijan wants them to think they are alone and that nobody cares. But you show that people do care. Dear colleagues, I know conflicts tend to be complicated, but sometimes they are quite simple. We have a situation when Azerbaijan, the president of Azerbaijan, on November 9, 2020, has signed under a paper which says the Lachin corridor should be under the control of peacekeepers, and the Republic of Azerbaijan guarantees the flow of cargo, people, vehicles from Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh and the other way around through the Lachin corridor. Now we don't have this situation. This is already the 46th day when this road is blocked. And furthermore, there is no gas and there is no electricity because Azerbaijan has cut them off. Of course, as some of the speakers mentioned, Azerbaijan will deny this. And our Azerbaijani colleagues will start to bring arguments saying that first there is no blockade, and second, they will start justifying the blockade, which according to them is not there, by the so-called eco-activists. And there is only one way to check this, dear friends. Let's suppose that there is some evil Armenian conspiracy, worldwide conspiracy, which has somehow managed to lie to everyone and to convince Americans, the Russians, the French, the Iranians, the UK, the OSCE, the Council of Europe, the ECHR, that there is a blockade which actually doesn't exist. Okay, this means that Azerbaijan must agree that, in this case, this organization, PACE, should send a fact-finding mission to the Lachin corridor immediately. Because that would be the only way for our Azerbaijani colleagues to prove that we are making false accusations. And when I say we are making, I mean I, my Armenian colleagues, and all the other colleagues which are not Armenian and who spoke today. If our Azerbaijani colleagues do not agree to this, this means that they do actually have genocidal intent. Their intention is to rid Nagorno-Karabakh of its Armenian population, and this means that this organization should act accordingly and should take measures to prevent this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Zeki Hakan Sidali from Turkey. Zeki.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start by stating that the priority for all of us is that peace and stability should prevail in South Caucasus. As of 2020, we see that a new era of peace and dialogue has emerged. In the last 2 months, there's a new tension rising in the region. Here we have to deal with the issue from all points of view. Looking through a single and prejudiced angle, having double standards leads us to false judgments and unfair results. Today we are discussing claims regarding the Lachin corridor. However, Azerbaijani parliamentarians have repeatedly stated that this is not the case, and there is no problem of access to food in the region. There is, however, a serious perception management problem. We should be very careful against any perception which might lead to violation of previous agreements. There is no benefit to any member of PACE to reverse the peace environment and normalization steps taken in the region. So who does benefit from such a behavior? We must ask this question to ourselves. Unfortunately, there are many confrontations, even war, around us. Here we should be talking about peace, not escalation. We must act on facts, not perceptions. The founding values of the Council of Europe tells us to act accordingly. Our real contribution should be to encourage two delegations to sit together and find viable solutions to their bilateral issues. During my 5 years in PACE, I witnessed that Azerbaijani delegation has taken necessary and bold steps committed to the values of the Council. They realize that unnecessary confrontation only brings suffering and regression to the region and humanity. We should not disappoint this attitude. Whatever approach we choose with our words today, we will live it tomorrow. Either tension on one side or dialogue on the other. We must set an example for the whole world, especially for our own parliament. If we cannot achieve this in pace, where freedom of speech and conscience of democracy prevails instead of political oppression, none of us can succeed anywhere. As Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi said, don't look at someone to find faults. If you look to find, you will. Learn the ingenuity of covering others' faults, then you will be complete and pure. These words are not for two delegations. This is also for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Zeki. Now I call on debate Mr. Kamal Yafarov from Azerbaijan. Kamal.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, if there is any blockade, it's definitely an artificial information blockade conceived by those powers who wanted to divert attention from the war in Ukraine. An advisor to the Ukrainian President, Mikhailo Podolyak, gave a public interview to the Moldovan public television, and in his interview he said that the issues regarding Lachin corridor are being artificially inflated with an incorrect data on the size of local population in Khankendi with one specific intent to distract attention from the war in Ukraine. My colleagues, if there is a crisis, it's definitely a political one, and which was initiated with the Ruben Vardanyan plan. Ruben Vardanyan is a Russian criminal oligarch. On 2019, European Parliament demanded an investigation into activities of the Ruben Vardanyan while he was the head of Troika Dialogue Investment Bank, which later was acquired by Sberbank or Russian Federation. Ruben Vardanyan was sent from Moscow with open and clear agenda. His first mission is to damage the peace process, damage the established contacts with local Armenians, and his second mission is, my dear Armenian colleagues, is throw out the Pashinyan from the power and to become next Prime Minister of Armenia. And that's another reason of this information manipulation for the rivalry between Pashinyan and Ruben Vardanyan. My dear colleagues, if there is a humanitarian concern, it's definitely the concern of the 282 victims of landmines planted by Armenia. Armenians abusing Lachin corridor planted mines which was made by Armenia in 2021. A number of the cars are passing through the Lachin corridor in the last 2 months are 3 times more than a member of this parliamentary assembly. Is more than 1,000 cars, including peacekeeping, International Red Cross, even including civil Armenian cars. But the number of the cars are passing through the Zangezur corridor is 0, which Armenia also promised to open interlateral agreement. My message is to the local Armenians in Khankendi. Throughout the Ruben Vardanyan, yourself for yourself. Our message to the Pashinyan, don't believe false promises made by France. The whole world already seen how the France kept his promise for Ukrainian cause. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamal. Now I call on the debate Mr. Domagoj Hadjukovic from Croatia. Domagoj, you have the floor. But I do not see him with us, so next we call in the debate Mr. Vladimir Vardanian from Armenia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now it is even more clear. Thank you, Mr. Jafarov. You actually said now a very important thing. You said that Nagorno-Karabakh is under the siege. And I would like to title my speech with the one Greek word from the Bible. Exodus, Exodus, Exodus. What you are demanding, it's an exodus of all Armenian population. This is your aim. Look, first, nobody of you speaking here, trying to say that there is no blockade, actually said something to prove that it's open. Let's understand what's going on there. If it is environmentalist, what is their demand? If we would like to regulate something, what is the demand of the government? If the problem in personalities, who is the problem? No. You may find a lot of different reasons, but the aim is the following. I absolutely agree with those who said that it is clear genocidal intent in accordance with the Article 2, paragraph C of the Genocide Convention to destroy fully or in part a group. That's the aim. Let's be very fair with each other. And let's try at least once to say it clearly to the public. Yes, our intent is to destroy Armenians. Unfortunately, I should state it clear. Lachin corridor is blocked. Otherwise, why IRC is responsible for transferring persons from and to Nagorno-Karabakh? Lachin corridor is closed and people are starving and freezing. Lachin corridor is closed at 120,000 Armenians next door to the genocide. And if you're against all of this, let's agree. I am on behalf of each and every Armenian can state that we agree to admit any diplomatic, high rank, lower rank mission in Armenia and in Lachin corridor. Let's show to the world what is going on there. This is the demand of humanity. This is the demand of the values of the Council of Europe. Otherwise, you are just proving that you are organizing a genocidal intent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker in the debate is Madam Sena Çelik from Turkey. Sena, you have the floor.
Dear President, dear colleagues, we are all aware of the importance of ensuring freedom and security of movement along the Lachin corridor for humanitarian reasons, especially the transfer of medical aid, food and essential goods. Azerbaijani authorities reject the allegations of the blockade of the corridor, referring to the daily use of the corridor by tens of vehicles of the peacekeeping contingent and the ICRC. Azerbaijani authorities and our Azerbaijani colleagues here also declare that Azerbaijan facilitates the humanitarian needs of all Armenian residents living in the region. It's important to emphasize that Azerbaijan is concerned about the illegal exploitation of mineral deposits in its territories and the resulting environmental consequences, as well as the abuse of the Lachin corridor for military purposes by Armenia, which constitutes violations of the trilateral statement. We should urge both parties to uphold the trilateral statement and work towards the common goal of finding a peaceful resolution. It's important to emphasize that the activities of the Russian peacekeeping contingent should not undermine the sovereignty of Azerbaijan. On the broader context, the recent developments have demonstrated once again the importance of addressing the root causes of the conflict and concluding peace agreement to achieve sustainable peace between two countries. It's been over 2 years since the end of the Second Karabakh War. Azerbaijan liberated its lands from Armenian occupation and secured its territorial integrity and sovereignty. The war is over, but peace is yet to be finalized. Armenia has the chance to win the peace. It can achieve normalization with both Azerbaijan and Turkey by concluding a comprehensive peace treaty. As you know, there is an important ongoing normalization process between Turkey and Armenia. The international community should strongly support and accelerate this historic opportunity of peace and full normalization in the South Caucasus. Third parties' efforts should take into full account sensitivities of both parties. Third parties' efforts should also be mutually reinforcing and complementary. In conclusion, I would like to remind us all that the peace and stability in Karabakh is crucial not only for the people living there, but also for the stability and security of the entire region. Thank you.
Thank you, Sena. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Michael Popsoy from the Republic of Moldova.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to also take a moment and address the sensitive situation around the Lachin corridor in Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijani government has been appealing over a year to prevent the illegal activity in the territories where the Russian peacekeeping contingent is temporarily deployed. We have our own painful experience with the Russian military presence. The Kremlin refuses to be part of the solution, but rather chooses to be part of the problem, aiming to maintain the frozen conflicts instead of facilitating a lasting peaceful settlement. Clearly, Azerbaijan has legitimate objections and concerns when it comes to preventing the potential abuse of the Lachin corridor, which is intended for humanitarian purposes. On the other hand, the Armenian side also has raised concerns about the closure of the Lachin corridor and the creation of a humanitarian crisis in the region. They have claimed that the road is being closed and it is affecting the provision of necessary goods to the services to the local residents. It is important to note that both sides have valid concerns, and it is important to find a solution that respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and at the same time ensures the provision of necessary goods and services to the local residents. That trilateral agreement signed by the parties should be taken into consideration while finding a peaceful solution. In conclusion, I hope that the Parliamentary Assembly could help in finding or facilitating a peaceful resolution to the situation. We hope that the Assembly will take into consideration the valid concerns of both sides and will work towards finding a solution that respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and at the same time ensures the provisions of necessary goods and services to the local residents. We hope that all parties involved will come to the negotiating table and work towards finding a peaceful resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Rafael Husseinov from Azerbaijan. Rafael.
Thank you, President, dear colleagues. In November 2020, Azerbaijan solved the most complicated problem in its contemporary history. The lands of Azerbaijan, occupied for almost 30 years by Armenia, through the aid of its patronizing forces, were liberated. The opposite side, which was powerless on the battlefield against Azerbaijan, is now trying to create a false impression in the world community through various speculative tricks. One of such methods of political speculation is the hype created around the pseudo-problem called Lachin corridor. There is a well-known proverb in Azerbaijan: a lie has legs, but it would not walk. The Armenian propaganda machine claims that the Lachin corridor is closed. This is not true information, but a clear attempt to deceive the world community. The President of Azerbaijan officially announced this a few days ago at the International Economic Forum in Davos. The head of state stated that in order to confuse the international community, Armenia is engaged in manipulations related to the developments taking place on the Lachin road, claiming that the road is closed based on the false information. Nevertheless, this road is open for the passage of civilians and civilian goods, and the free movement of humanitarian goods is ensured through the International Committee of the Red Cross. Such coming and goings happen every day in the Lachin corridor. Therefore, it is completely acceptable to make accusations against Azerbaijan based on the false words of Armenia about the alleged closure of the corridor or saving some unclean purposes. We firmly reject all this. On the other hand, Armenia has been keeping Nakhchivan, an integral part of Azerbaijan, in a state of complete blockade for 30 years. Azerbaijan has repeatedly raised the issue of opening the Zengez corridor by Armenia. Nonetheless, Armenia does not do this. You blockade the region of Azerbaijan to not open the Zengez corridor and demand that Azerbaijan turns the already opened Lachin corridor into a criminal corridor. And one more important question. Literally in January of this year, on the eve of our part session, at a panel meeting of the Davos Forum, President Ilham Aliyev unequivocally stated that Armenia is not responding to Azerbaijan's call to sign a peace agreement based on the fundamental principles of international law. Armenia is not willing to accept the offer of trilateral cooperation with Azerbaijan and Georgia. Azerbaijan invites the three Caucasian countries to unite their efforts in the areas of energy, transport, security, stability, and delimitation of borders. Georgia gladly agrees to this. Armenia says no. Well, in what language and in what style to speak with such an unconstructive party?
Thank you very much, Rafael. Now we are going to listen to Madam Nigar Aparataray from Azerbaijan. Nigar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really hear and listen to all these speeches, and I feel so sorry that some members of this distinguished assembly forget about basic principles of international law. Dear colleagues, Lachin Road and Karabakh is a sovereign territory of Azerbaijan. I would like to remind you all this. I will speak about the road and about the story that Armenian side is trying to portray here. But before that, I would like to remind you something, which this assembly forgets all the time. It is that 30 years ago, piece of territory of Azerbaijan has been occupied by Armenia, ethnically cleansed by Armenia, in an attempt to annexation of this part of Azerbaijan. They have put it into their constitution. Their declaration of independence says that Karabakh is a part of Armenia. Can you imagine? Moreover, it has been confirmed by their constitutional court. So one member state of this organization occupies the territory of another member state and tries to legitimize that. This is exactly what you should all be worried about. Dear colleagues, about Lachin Road. Lachin Road, there is no humanitarian catastrophe in Karabakh, and there is no risk of happening it in the future for a simple reason that it's open. Every day we have trucks going back and forth through the corridor. And Azerbaijan is providing all the access to food, to medicine, to pharma, to civilians, and to all this. The media drama about fake blockade is staged by a new separatist leader and notorious money launderer from Russia, a person who has no connections to Karabakh, who just came from nowhere, who has been put into sanctions list by Ukraine, who is a person subject to various investigations, Ruben Vardanyan. The reason why he and forces behind him do it is to maintain a lawless piece of land where arms are smuggled, shady business goes on, and resources are being barbarically exploited and stolen for personal gain. The residents of Karabakh are hostages to this ideology. Sooner this lawlessness stops and Karabakh integrates into Azerbaijani legal space, the better is for everyone and for all the states. This will contribute to stability and peace in the region, will limit the ability of external forces to meddle in the affairs of both Azerbaijan and Armenia. It will, in essence, make both countries stronger, and this is what I call both countries stronger, and I'm calling Armenian side to sit with Azerbaijan and to finally start thinking about peace deal. Dear colleagues, international community failed 20 years ago, long negotiations before war broke out in 2020. This time it seems due to the lack of vision and proper information. There is a risk of a repeated mistake again. I would like to remind everybody that Karabakh is Azerbaijan and always will be by international law and by law and reality. And the sooner everyone gets it, the better it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 3 minutes for everybody. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Haik Mamyanian from Armenia. Haik.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't think that 3 minutes is a possible period of time to answer all that false information provided by the representatives of Azerbaijan. But, dear colleagues, you all see the situation. The world, all the international organizations, many states tell that there is a blockade, there is a humanitarian catastrophe, and there are a few people in these chambers who try to state that it's not like that. Well, it's really hard to provide facts, as Azerbaijan is refused to provide possibility of the missions, any missions. But I don't know if it's a fact or not, but during this debate, I have read 4 or 5 posts on different groups on social media from the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. And they were about the discussion parents were asking, is there anyone who has baby food that I can borrow for my kids? This is a quite good fact for me. So, you know, you can think and say anything you want regarding the ammunition and some ridiculous things about that. But what's the meaning of blocking and stopping the gas pipeline, the electricity, the internet? You do think that there is a possibility to provide ammunition, it's absurd, but anyway, by gas pipeline or by internet cables? No. The only reason that Azerbaijan is conducting this blockade is to make grounds for ethnic cleansing. And you know, I know why it is happening. The only explanation for that is Karabakh is only a territory for you, and it's homeland for us. You know, people in Nagorno-Karabakh do have a shortage of food, medicine, electricity, gas, but there are a few things that they definitely have. They do have honor, they do have a right to live on their soil, in their homeland, and they definitely have a right for self-determination. And please remember, I have said that very many times, and I will continue it till you understand that. Artsakh will never be part of Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now the last speaker in the debate will be Mr. Anton Gomez Reino from Spain. Anton, you have the floor.
President.
Thank you very much indeed, President. I think that in a geopolitical climate which is in turmoil, and we're seeing this at regional as well as global level, the international community, and particularly this organization, has to guarantee human rights and cannot allow the kind of instability and tension that we are witnessing in the Caucasus, because it affects regional stability as well as international legality, and above all has an adverse effect on human rights for the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. But we are where we are, and multilateral organizations are there to promote dialogue and human rights, as well as security in Europe. They are in crisis, and this situation means that we are blocked in terms of what we can do. Would it therefore not be easier to avoid a violation of the human rights of people in Lachin and Nagorno-Karabakh if we had multilateral organizations that were stronger, rather than having a situation in which the strongest takes advantage of the situation to violate international law as well as bilateral agreements to generate new status quos? Clearly not. And this applies in the Caucasus and Nagorno-Karabakh as well as in other regional ongoing conflicts. And that is why, as a general consideration, the Council of Europe, where we talk about human rights, we shouldn't be talking systematically about sending arms. It's not productive and it's not relevant. And then there is the OSCE, which is there to provide a framework for security and peace, which is completely deadlocked because of the situation in Russia. It's going around in circles. But I want to talk in closing about another country, which is an observer country, Israel. Because in the West Bank, in West Jordan, in the West Bank, rather, the Israeli army attacked a refugee camp and killed 9 Palestinians, including an old woman. So let me conclude by saying how long are we going to allow Israel, an observer country in the Council of Europe, to execute civilians in Palestine? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anton. That concludes the list of speakers. Mr. Seidov, point of order. A point of order is a point of order.
Point of order is a point of order. Now I can see how biased approach to
Sorry, that is not a point of order.
No. I'm going to say a point of order. If during this so important discussion you are not able to present the speech for the leader of Azerbaijani delegation, this is exactly biased approach. If Armenians are able to present that,
now to sit down,
if the leader of Azerbaijani delegation is not able to do that, that's out of the reality and very biased approach.
And I will tell you that next time I will not tolerate that you abuse the rules. A point of order is about the order of the meeting. If you have something that is not correct, you do not abuse it for speaking times. I have to compliment you all. You have all observed the speaking time. That's very difficult in such a heated debate. So please do not abuse rules with points of order, which are no points of order. And I mean this very serious, Mr. Seidov, because you are an experienced member of this assembly. We don't act in that way. This concludes the list of speakers. I remind you that at the end of a current affairs debate, the assembly is not asked to decide upon a text, but the matter may be referred by the Bureau to the responsible committee for a report. Many suggestions have been made during the debate. The Bureau will decide upon that. The Assembly will hold its next public sitting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. with the agenda which was approved on Monday morning. The sitting is adjourned. I wish you a pleasant evening.